The transport shuttle dropped David Cole at the edge of what the Galactic Council called Quarantine Zone 7. Most humans would have turned around immediately. The jungle stretched endlessly in every direction, a wall of green so thick that sunlight barely touched the ground. Somewhere in that massive wilderness, dangerous animals roamed free. The council had made it clear this sector was too hostile for normal colonization. They needed someone crazy enough to live here alone. David stepped off the shuttle ramp with a worn backpack and a transport crate that occasionally rattled and growled. He was 52 years old, with sun-darkened skin and the kind of calm that only came from decades spent in wild places. Before Earth joined the galactic community, he had worked as a senior ranger in the Congo Basin. When the aliens arrived and started cataloging Earth's territories, they took one look at the dense rainforests and declared them hazardous zones. Too many predators. Too much disease. Too unpredictable. The council's solution was simple. Fence it off. Call a preservation area. Assign one human to make sure nobody wandered in and got killed. They expected David to set up automated sensors and spend his time in a climate-controlled station filing reports. They definitely did not expect him to treat this like the opportunity of a lifetime. You will have supply drops every 3 months, Quilix said, his insect-like body clicking with agitation. The council representative had traveled all the way from the orbital station to deliver David personally. Emergency beacon is in your equipment pack. Medical supplies are standard issue. I must emphasize the danger level of this assignment. David knelt beside the transport crate and opened the latch. A small, gray-brown animal burst out, sniffing the air with intense curiosity. She was about the size of a large house cat, with a distinctive white stripe running down her back and small, bright eyes that missed nothing. Quilix took 3 rapid steps backward. What is that creature? Her name is Fury, David said, scratching behind the honey badger's ears. Found her when she was just a few weeks old. Poachers had killed her mother. Raised her myself for the past 4 years. That animal is classified as extremely dangerous, Quilix said, consulting his datapad with trembling manipulator limbs. Malivera capensis. Reputation for aggression and fearlessness far beyond its size. Why would you bring such a creature here? David smiled. Because she's family. And because this jungle is her kind of place. Fury had already wandered off, investigating a fallen log with the focus of a seasoned detective. She flipped over a piece of bark with her strong claws, ate something David could not see, then moved on to examine a termite mound. The research station was 3 kilometers into the jungle, accessible only by foot trail. Quilix insisted on accompanying David for the initial inspection, though the administrator clearly regretted this decision within the first 100 meters. The humidity hit like a physical weight. Strange sounds echoed from the canopy above. Something large crashed through the undergrowth to their left, and Quilix nearly dropped his equipment. David moved through the environment like he was born to it. He pointed out tracks in the mud, identified bird calls, and casually stepped over a line of army ants that would have been agony for the unprepared. Fury trotted beside him or ranged ahead, completely at home in the chaos. How can you possibly secure this area? Quilix demanded when they finally reached the station. It was a simple structure, mostly open to the air, with sleeping quarters, a small lab, and communication equipment. There are thousands of square kilometers of terrain. Sensors can fail. Animals can bypass detection. You have no defensive perimeter, no automated weapons, no backup personnel. David set his pack down and pulled out a handheld device covered in mud and scratches. I have something better. See these? He showed Quilix a map covered in colored dots. Camera traps. Acoustic monitors. Motion sensors designed for wildlife research. I've got 200 units scattered through this sector, tracking everything that moves. Elephants, leopards, gorillas, forest buffalo. I know where they are, where they go, what they do. Animals are not a security system, Quilix said. Maybe not on your world, David replied. But here, this jungle is the security system. Those elephants get aggressive if you disturb their routes. The leopards are ambush hunters that could take down prey twice their size. Buffalo travel in herds and do not like surprises. Even the insects can be deadly if you do not know what you are doing. I do not need to fight intruders. I just need to make sure they meet the jungle on its terms, not theirs. Quilix looked around at the dense vegetation, the shadows, the constant noise of life all around them. This is madness. This is home, David said simply. Fury chose that moment to drag a snake nearly as long as she was across the clearing. It was already dead, probably killed moments before. She looked immensely proud of herself. Quilix left on the next shuttle, filing a report that predicted complete failure within 6 months. David read it later and laughed. The council representative had no idea what was possible when you stopped trying to control nature and started working with it instead. That night, David sat outside the station with Fury curled up beside him. The jungle sang its evening song, a symphony of frogs and insects and distant animal calls. Somewhere out there, a leopard coughed. An elephant trumpeted. Life continued exactly as it had for thousands of years. David was not here to change the jungle. He was here to protect it and let it be exactly what it was: beautiful, dangerous, and utterly unstoppable. The Galactic Council would learn soon enough. This sector did not need soldiers or weapons. It had something far more effective that IT had Earth. The Vren smuggling crew thought they had found easy prey. Their ship descended through the clouds towards Sector 7, scanners showing exactly what their intelligence had promised. Minimal technology signatures, no defensive installations, one isolated human. The cargo hold was already prepared with refrigerated containers for the biological samples they planned to steal. Rare earth plants, genetic material from endangered species, maybe even some live specimens if they could grab them quickly. Rakov, the crew leader, studied the terrain below with satisfaction. 3 kilometers to the research station. We land here, move fast, grab what we can carry, and leave before anyone notices. The human probably does not even have weapons. His crew consisted of 5 other Vren, all experienced in this kind of quick raid. They were reptilian beings from a desert world, comfortable with heat but unprepared for humidity. The moment they opened the airlock, the jungle air hit them like a wet blanket. "This moisture is disgusting," complained Vesa, the crew's tech specialist. She checked her scanner, frowning at the interference. "I'm getting strange readings. Lots of movement signatures, but they are everywhere. Must be animals." "Ignore them," Rakov ordered. "We stick to the plan. Fast in, fast out." What they did not know was that David had detected their landing within seconds. His network of camera traps and acoustic monitors covered the sector far better than any military sensor system. The unauthorized ship landing had triggered alerts across his entire monitoring network. He pulled up the feeds, watching 6 figures emerge from a small vessel and begin moving through the jungle with the confidence of people who had no idea what they were walking into. David made himself a cup of coffee and studied his maps. The smugglers were taking the obvious route, following a game trail that would cut their travel time in half. That same trail passed directly through territory currently occupied by a herd of forest elephants who had been especially irritable lately. One of the matriarchs had a young calf and was being very protective. He made a few adjustments to his remote feeding stations, activating one that would draw the elephants slightly closer to the trail. Then he checked another camera and smiled. A large male leopard named Scar, who David had been tracking for 3 years, was hunting in the same general area. The cat was smart and curious, always investigating new things in his territory. Fury looked up from where she was eating her breakfast and made a low grumbling sound. "Yeah, we have visitors," David told her. "Want to go say hello?" The honey badger's ears perked up immediately. She loved meeting new things, especially things that did not belong in her jungle. The Vren made it about 2 hours before things started going wrong. Their equipment began malfunctioning in the humidity. Moisture seeped into connections that were designed for dry environments. Vessa's scanner died completely, its circuits fried by condensation. Then they heard the elephants. The sound started as a low rumble that they felt more than heard. Then came the trumpeting, loud and aggressive, coming from somewhere ahead on the trail. Through the dense vegetation, they could see massive gray shapes moving between the trees. "Go around," Rakov ordered, his confidence starting to crack. They pushed off the trail into thicker jungle. This was a mistake. The undergrowth was nearly impassable, full of thorns and hanging vines. Something bit Vessa's arm, leaving a painful welt. Another crew member stepped too close to a tree and disturbed a nest of bees. Not earth bees, but large African bees that took their territorial defense very seriously. The Vren ran, crashing through the jungle with all pretense of stealth abandoned. The bees eventually stopped chasing them, but by then the crew was scattered, disoriented, and beginning to panic. That was when they met Scar. The leopard did not attack. He was well-fed and not particularly interested in strange-smelling aliens. But he was curious. He followed them through the canopy, occasionally appearing as a flash of spotted gold among the leaves. Every glimpse made the Vren jump and change direction. By nightfall, they were completely lost. They tried to set up camp in a small clearing, but the jungle was not done with them. Mosquitoes swarmed in clouds. Something large snuffled around their perimeter in the darkness. Strange calls echoed through the trees, sounds that sparked primal fears in their nervous systems. Then Fury arrived. The honey badger had been tracking them for hours, following their clumsy trail with ease. She waited until full dark, then announced her presence with her signature sound, a rattling, coughing growl that sounded like nothing else in nature. The Vren grabbed their lights, scanning the darkness. They caught glimpses of a small, striped animal circling their camp just beyond the firelight. It moved with absolute confidence, completely unafraid of creatures 5 times its size. "It is just a small animal," Rakov said, trying to sound calm. "Ignore it." Fury took this as a challenge. She charged straight through their camp, scattering equipment and causing the Vren to scramble away from something that weighed less than 15 kilograms. She grabbed a supply pack and dragged it into the jungle before anyone could react. This happened 3 more times during the night. Fury would wait until they settled down, then raid their camp again. She took food, equipment, even one of their boots. She did not eat most of it. She just seemed to enjoy the chaos. The Vren got no sleep, jumping at every sound, expecting the fearless little bees to attack at any moment. David arrived at their camp just after dawn, walking calmly down the trail they had abandoned the day before. Fury trotted beside him, looking extremely pleased with herself. The Vren were huddled against their ship, which they had somehow managed to find again in the night. They had given up on the raid entirely and just wanted to leave. "You folks look rough," David observed. "This jungle can be tricky if you do not know it." Rakov stared at him with exhausted eyes. "You knew we were here. You did this." "I did not do anything," David said honestly. "The elephants were already on that trail. The leopard lives here. The bees were protecting their hive." In fury, he looked down at the honey badger. She just does not like strangers in her territory. The smugglers left within the hour, their ship departing so fast that they scorched the vegetation around their landing site. David filed a report with the council about the attempted intrusion, noting that the situation had been handled without any need for intervention. Quilix's response came back 2 days later, a single line expressing disbelief that animals could deter armed criminals. David deleted it and went back to work. The jungle knew how to defend itself. He just helped point it in the right direction. General Kilos was not impressed. The Thurian military commander had fought in campaigns across 3 sectors and earned decorations for tactical excellence. When the Galactic Council sent him to inspect this supposedly secure Earth sector, he expected to find hidden weapon systems or classified defense technology. What he found instead was one middle-aged human living in a jungle with a bad-tempered animal. "This is unacceptable," Kilos announced, his 4 arms gesturing at the simple research station. "Where are your defensive emplacements? Your automated sentries? Your backup protocols?" David leaned against the station railing, completely relaxed. "Don't need them. The jungle handles security better than any system I could build." Kilos' security detail consisted of 6 trained soldiers, all equipped with standard combat gear. They stood at attention behind their commander, looking professional despite the sweat already soaking their uniforms. The humidity was worse than their briefing had indicated. Your report claims animals deterred armed smugglers, Kilos said. I find this claim highly suspect. My team and I will conduct a patrol to assess actual threat levels. We are prepared for any wilderness conditions. David exchanged a glance with Fury, who was sprawled in a patch of sunlight, looking half asleep. Sure, I can give you a tour. Fair warning, though, the jungle does not really care about your training. They set out an hour later. Kilos insisted on leading the patrol personally, following a route he had selected from satellite maps. David tried to suggest a different path, but the general dismissed his advice. The Thurian military did not take directions from civilians. The first problem happened 20 minutes in. One of the soldiers was watching the ground for threats when something dropped onto his shoulders from above. He screamed and thrashed, trying to dislodge a large python that had been resting on a branch. The snake was not attacking, just startled, but the soldier's panic made everything worse. David calmly unwrapped the python and carried it off the trail. They like to sun themselves in the canopy. Usually they drop down to avoid larger animals. That's us, by the way. Kilos made a note on his tactical pad. Environmental hazard cataloged. Continue. The second incident was more serious. The patrol crossed through an area where army ants were migrating. David saw the column and started to warn them, but one soldier stepped directly into the stream of insects before he could speak. Army ants did not sting. They bit, and they bit everything. Within seconds, the soldier was covered in angry insects that swarmed up his legs and into his armor. The patrol had to stop while the soldier stripped off his gear and brushed away thousands of biting ants. His legs were covered in welts. David offered a medicinal plant paste that helped with the swelling, something he had learned from local research before the aliens arrived. Why did you not warn us? Kilos demanded. I tried, David said mildly. You were not listening. They continued, but the general's confidence was starting to crack. The jungle was not like the controlled environments where his troops usually trained. Everything here was alive, active, and completely indifferent to military rank. Insects bit. Plants had thorns. The heat was relentless. Then they reached the water hole. Kilos wanted to refill their water supplies from what looked like a calm, clear pool. David strongly advised against approaching it. Naturally, the general ignored this advice and sent 2 soldiers to collect water. They made about 3 meters from the edge before the crocodile surfaced. It was a massive animal, over 4 meters long, with eyes that tracked the soldiers with ancient patience. The Thurians froze, suddenly understanding that their weapons meant nothing to a predator that had perfected its hunting strategy millions of years before they evolved. David whistled sharply. The crocodile turned its head slightly, recognized him, and slid back into the water with barely a ripple. He had been monitoring this individual for months, knew its territory and behavior patterns. It was not going to attack unless provoked, but the soldiers did not know that. How did you do that? One of the soldiers whispered. I did not do anything, David explained. She knows me. I have never threatened her, so she has no reason to see me as prey. You're strangers. Strangers get evaluated as potential meals. Kilos was finally beginning to understand. This was not about controlling the environment. It was about understanding it so well that you became part of it. The breaking point came when they stopped to rest. Kilos set his communication device down while he consulted his maps. When he reached for it again, the device was gone. He searched the immediate area, his soldiers fanning out, but found nothing. Fury sat about 10 meters away, partially hidden behind a termite mound, with the comm device clutched in her paws. She was not chewing it or damaging it, just holding it and watching them with bright, intelligent eyes. Give that back immediately, Kilos commanded. Fury yawned, showing impressive teeth. She is not military, David said. Try not to smile. Commands do not really work. You have to negotiate. Negotiate with an animal. She's not just an animal. She is Fury, and she likes games. It took 20 minutes of Kilos trying to approach before Fury finally lost interest. She would let him get close, then scamper away with surprising speed for something with such short legs. She led the general in circles, through mud, over logs, and once through a particularly dense thorn bush. When she finally dropped the device and wandered off, Kilos was covered in scratches and completely exhausted. That evening, They sat around the campfire at David's station. The soldiers were treating various bites, scratches, and stings. Kilos himself was quiet, his tactical certainty shaken. "How does one manage this?" he finally asked. "This chaos." David fed a piece of dried fruit to Fury, who had returned to curl up beside him like nothing had happened. "You do not manage it. You learn it. Every animal here has patterns, behaviors, territories. The elephants migrate on specific routes. The leopards hunt at certain times. Even the insects follow rules. Once you understand those rules, you can predict what will happen. More importantly, you can use that knowledge." "Use it how?" "Those smugglers I reported, they walked straight into elephant territory during calving season. I just made sure the herd was where they were going to be. The leopard followed them because new things interest him. Fury harassed them because that is what she does. I did not force anything. I just understood what would happen and let it happen." Kilos looked at the jungle surrounding them, seeing it differently now, not as random chaos, but as a complex system with its own logic. "This is a completely different form of security doctrine. It is the oldest form," David said. "Humans have been working with nature for thousands of years. We just forgot for a while when we got too focused on technology. This jungle reminded me what actually works." The general left the next day with a report very different from what he had expected to write. Sector 7 was secure, not despite its wildlife, but because of it. And the human ranger managing it had turned an entire ecosystem into the most effective defense system Kilos had ever seen. Fury stole his other comm device on his way out, just to make a point. The Krell Syndicate specialized in taking what others could not defend. They were a militarized faction that had seized mining rights, colony territories, and resource zones across a dozen systems. When their intelligence network identified Sector 7 as a high-value target with minimal defenses, they mobilized a full strike team. 40 soldiers trained specifically for hostile environment warfare, equipped with the best gear their organization could buy. Their commander, a scarred veteran named Torvin, reviewed the tactical assessment with satisfaction. One human ranger, no visible weapon systems. Terrain favored infantry operations. The biological resources in that sector were worth billions on the black market. This would be their easiest operation in years. The Krell landing was textbook perfect. They came down in 3 separate locations, planning to converge on the research station from different directions. Torvin expected the human to surrender immediately when faced with overwhelming force. If not, well, accidents happen in the jungle. David was drinking his morning coffee when the alert started flooding in. 3 unauthorized landings. 40-plus heat signatures spreading through the jungle in coordinated patterns. He pulled up his camera feeds and watched professional soldiers beginning their advance. The Council's orbital observer contacted him immediately. "We are detecting a major incursion. Do you require military support?" "No thanks," David said calmly. "I've got this. You have 40 armed hostiles entering your sector." "I know. The jungle knows too." He studied his maps, tracking the 3 groups and comparing their routes to his wildlife movement data. The northern team was heading straight toward an area where driver ants were currently migrating. The eastern team would cross a river at a point where hippos had been gathering. The southern team, Torvin's main force, was taking a route that passed through territory claimed by a particularly aggressive gorilla family. David made a few minor adjustments to his feeding stations and water sources, then settled back to watch. Fury sat on his lap, watching his screens with interest. The northern team encountered the driver ants first. These are not the ordinary ants most species knew. African driver ants moved in columns millions strong, consuming everything in their path that could not flee. The Krell soldiers walked straight into a migration stream in a narrow ravine where avoiding them was impossible. The ants swarmed over boots, up legs, into armor seals. They bit anything they encountered, and there were so many that brushing them off was pointless. The soldiers broke formation and ran, some stripping off equipment to escape the insects. By the time they found clear ground, they were bitten, demoralized, and had lost most of their supplies. The eastern team made it farther before hitting trouble. They needed to cross the river, and their maps showed a shallow ford. What the maps did not show was that this ford was currently occupied by a hippopod with several young calves. Hippos killed more humans in Africa than any other large animal, and they did it with good reason. They were territorial, aggressive, and weighed over 2,000 kilograms of muscle and bad attitude. When the Krell soldiers waded into what they thought was an empty river, the hippos responded with instant violence. The soldiers scrambled back to shore, chased by animals that could run faster than they could despite their bulk. One soldier was not fast enough. A hippo caught him in the shallows and tossed him like a toy. He survived, but with broken ribs and a new respect for Earth's wildlife. The Eastern team was forced to detour several kilometers downstream. Losing hours and their nerve, Torvin's Southern Force seemed to be doing better. They advanced in good order, maintaining discipline despite the heat and humidity. Then they made camp for the night in a clearing that looked perfect for their purposes. What they did not know was that this clearing was part of a gorilla family's territory. The silverback who led this group was named Brutus by David, and he was absolutely massive even by gorilla standards. He had 7 females, 3 juveniles, and a very low tolerance for intruders. The Krell set up their equipment and posted guards. Everything seemed secure. Then the gorillas began their evening feeding pattern, which brought them directly through the clearing. The first soldier to spot Brutus froze in pure terror. The silverback stood upright at nearly 2 meters tall, over 200 kilograms of pure muscle, with canines that could shred body armor. Brutus roared, a sound that shook the clearing and triggered every primal fear in the Krell soldiers' brains. He beat his chest, a drumming that echoed like thunder. The other gorillas emerged from the jungle around them, surrounding the camp. The Krell had weapons that could kill the gorillas easily, but shooting was not an option. Gorillas were protected under Earth's endangered species protocols. Killing one would bring down the full weight of the Galactic Council. More importantly, these were not mindless beasts. They were a family defending their territory. Torvin ordered his team to retreat. They backed away slowly, abandoning their equipment, while Brutus followed them to the edge of his territory to make sure they left. The gorillas claimed the clearing, tearing apart the Krell supplies with casual strength. The 3 teams eventually regrouped, battered and exhausted. They had lost most of their equipment to ants, hippos, and gorillas. But Torvin refused to give up. They would proceed on foot with minimal gear and complete this mission through sheer determination. That was when they truly met fury. The honey badger had been following them since the gorilla encounter, tracking them with the patience of a natural predator. She waited until they made camp again, until they finally thought they might get some rest. Then she attacked their supplies. Fury was not trying to kill anyone. She was much too small for that. But she was absolutely fearless and incredibly destructive. She tore into their remaining food stores. She chewed through equipment packs. She screamed at them with that distinctive rattling call that sounded like something much larger and more dangerous. When they tried to chase her off, she simply ran a short distance and waited. When they returned to camp, she returned. This continued all night. The Krell soldiers, already exhausted and demoralized, got no sleep at all. Every time they closed their eyes, Fury was back, creating chaos. The breaking point came at dawn. Fury had stolen Torvin's tactical pad and was sitting on a rock, carefully dismantling it with her strong claws. When Torvin approached, she looked him dead in the eye and destroyed the last functional piece of his command equipment. The Krell invasion force staggered into David's research station around noon. They were defeated not by weapons, but by insects, large animals, heat, humidity, and one small honey badger who absolutely refused to quit. David stood on his porch, watching them approach. Fury sat beside him, looking smug. "I am here to formally surrender," Torvin said, his voice hoarse. "Please just let us leave." "You were never prisoners," David replied. "You were just visitors who did not understand where you were visiting." The Krell left on emergency shuttles that afternoon. Their invasion attempt had failed completely without David firing a single shot. The Orbital Observer filed a report that the Council would study for months, trying to understand how one human and an ecosystem had defeated a military force. David read the report later and shook his head. They still did not get it. This was not about defeating enemies. It was about understanding that on Earth, nature did not need humans to defend it. Sometimes nature just needed someone who knew when to step back and let it do what it did best. Fury curled up at her favorite sunny spot, already asleep, dreaming whatever dreams honey badgers have when they have successfully terrorized 40 trained soldiers. David thought those dreams were probably very satisfying. Kvex was a collector. The Zentari crime lord owned exotic animals from 40 different worlds, all displayed in his private menagerie like trophies. When he heard stories about the legendary honey badger who had helped defeat a military invasion, he became obsessed. He needed to possess such a creature. The prestige alone would be worth millions that he hired the best. The Talon brothers were famous across the underworld for capturing dangerous animals without killing them. They had taken down predators that terrified entire colonies. One small earth creature would be easy money. There were 5 of them. They landed quietly at night, far from David's monitoring stations, using stealth technology that cost more than most ships. Their equipment was specialized for exactly this kind of operation. Stun nets, tranquilizer darts calibrated for earth mammals, reinforced capture containers, and shielded suits that could withstand claws and teeth. Target is small, approximately 8 kilograms, said Dren, the team leader, reviewing their briefing. Reputation suggests high aggression but limited actual threat. We contain it, sedate it, and extract within 6 hours. Simple. They had researched Earth animals extensively. They knew honey badgers were tough for their size, but these were professionals who had captured things much more dangerous. They were not worried. David detected their landing within minutes. His sensors were designed to track wildlife, which made them excellent at detecting anything trying to move quietly through the jungle. He pulled up the camera feeds and watched 5 figures in advanced gear moving through the darkness with practiced efficiency. Fury was asleep on her favorite blanket when David gently shook her awake. She grumbled in annoyance until she saw his expression. Then her ears perked up. "We have got hunters," David told her quietly. "They're coming for you specifically. I can handle them, or I can let you handle them. Your choice." Fury's response was to head straight for the door. David watched her disappear into the jungle and settled back with his monitoring equipment. This was going to be interesting. The Talon brothers found Fury's trail easily. She was not trying to hide. The tracks led them along a game trail toward the river. Dren smiled behind his helmet. The animal was following predictable patterns, probably heading to a water source. They could set up an ambush and have her contained in minutes. They positioned themselves along the trail with their nets ready. Motion sensors picked up something approaching. Right on schedule. Dren raised his hand to signal the capture. Fury walked past them completely, ignoring the hidden hunters like they did not exist. She knew exactly where they were. She could smell them, hear their breathing, sense their presence. She just did not care. Instead, she led them straight toward the river, toward a specific section of the bank where something very large had been spending its evenings. The Talon brothers followed, confused but confident. Their target was right there. They could take her whenever they wanted. Fury stopped at the water's edge and began digging in the mud, apparently searching for food. She looked completely vulnerable. Dren signaled his team. They closed in from 3 sides, nets ready. Then the crocodile exploded from the water. T was not attacking Fury. She knew that crocodile, had seen David interact with it dozens of times, understood it was not a threat to her. But the hunters were strangers standing right at the water's edge, and crocodiles respond to movement. The Talon brothers scattered, their careful formation destroyed by several tons of armored predator lunging onto the bank. Their nets tangled. One hunter tripped and fell into shallow water. Dren fired a tranquilizer dart in panic. Missing the crocodile completely, not be why the time they regrouped, Fury was gone. They found her trail again an hour later. This time, she was heading into denser jungle, toward an area marked on their maps as containing multiple large animal signatures. They should have turned back. Instead, their professional pride was hurt. They had never failed a capture mission. Fury led them straight into buffalo territory. Forest buffalo were not the placid domestic animals from other worlds. These were massive, unpredictable, and extremely dangerous when surprised. Fury was small enough and familiar enough to move through their grazing areas safely. 5 armored strangers were not. The buffalo herd startled when they detected the hunters. What followed was chaos. Half a ton of angry buffalo charging through the jungle sounded like an earthquake. The Talon brothers ran, their expensive equipment forgotten, as the herd stampeded around them. They ended up trapped in a ravine, surrounded by buffalo who were not attacking but were definitely not letting them leave. Fury watched from a safe perch on a fallen log, her expression as close to amused as a honey badger could get. David found the hunters 3 hours later. They were still in the ravine, exhausted and terrified, while the buffalo grazed peacefully at both exits. He climbed down to them easily, the buffalo ignoring him completely. "You guys look like you have had a rough night," he observed. "That creature is a demon," Dren said, his voice shaking. "It led us into every danger in this jungle." "She did not lead you anywhere," David corrected. "You followed her." "Big difference. Fury does not run from threats. She uses them. That is what makes her special. We were hired to capture her." "I know. Kvek sent you. He has been asking around about her for weeks." David sat down on a rock, completely relaxed despite the buffalo standing just meters away. "Want to know the real reason you cannot catch her? It is not because she is fast, though she is. It is not because she is strong, though pound for pound she might be the toughest animal in this jungle. It is because she never gives up and never backs down. Ever. You cannot outlast something that does not know how to quit." He helped extract the hunters from the ravine, using knowledge of buffalo behavior to create a safe corridor. The animals moved aside for him because he had never given them reason to see him as a threat. The Talon brothers stumbled out, their pride destroyed along with most of their equipment. Fury was waiting at David's station when they all returned at dawn. She was eating breakfast, looking perfectly content, without a scratch on her. The hunters looked at her with something between fear and respect. "How did you raise such a creature?" Dren asked. "I did not raise her to be anything," David said. "I just gave her a safe place to be exactly what she already was." Honey badgers are like that. They do not need training to be fierce. They just are. Always have been. 30 pounds of absolute determination wrapped in fur and bad attitude. The Talon brothers left empty-handed, their reputation damaged, but their lives intact. Kvex sent increasingly aggressive messages demanding his prize, but David ignored them. Eventually, the crime lord moved on to obsessing about something else. David sat on his porch that evening with Fury beside him. She had curled up against his leg, finally relaxed after her adventure. He scratched behind her ears, and she made that soft, chittering sound that meant she was content. "You know you are famous now, right?" he told her. "The honey badger who defeated professional hunters without even trying." Fury yawned, showing her impressive teeth, and closed her eyes. Fame meant nothing to her. She had defended her territory, outsmarted her enemies, and used every advantage the jungle offered. That was just another day for a honey badger, David understood. That was exactly why she was special. Not because she was trained or programmed or engineered, just because she was authentically, completely, unstoppably herself. And in this jungle, that was the most dangerous thing of all. The Galactic Council's proposal arrived 6 months after the failed invasion. They wanted to establish a training program in Sector 7, teaching their security forces Earth's methods of ecosystem-based defense. David read the formal request 3 times, trying to decide if they were serious. "They want me to teach classes?" he asked Fury, who was investigating a basket of fresh fruit. "I am a wildlife ranger, not an instructor." The council was very serious. They offered substantial funding, official recognition, and a small support staff. More importantly, they promised that Sector 7 would remain exactly as it was. No development, no interference, just a training facility where other species could learn what Earth had figured out thousands of years ago. David agreed, mostly because refusing would probably result in someone else taking over who did not understand the jungle. At least this way he could control how it was done. The first class arrived 3 months later. 5 students from 5 different species, all with backgrounds in military or security operations. They expected tactical doctrine and classroom instruction. What they got was David handing them basic camping gear and telling them they would be living in the jungle for the next 8 weeks. Rin was the most challenging student. She was Pelian, a species that evolved on a world with almost no large predators. Her people developed in relative safety, which meant fear of dangerous animals was not bred into them. It had to be learned, and Rin was terrified. The first week was rough. Every sound made her jump. She could not sleep because she kept imagining things in the darkness. When David took the class to observe elephants from a safe distance, Rin refused to leave the camp. "I cannot do this," she told David that evening. "My people are not like yours. We did not evolve surrounded by predators. This fear is overwhelming." "Fear is not your enemy," David said, sitting beside her while the jungle sang its evening song. "Fear keeps you alert. It makes you cautious. The problem is when fear stops you from moving forward at all. How do I overcome it? You do not overcome it. You move forward anyway." The breakthrough came during an exercise where David paired each student with an aspect of the jungle to study in depth. He assigned Rin to track and observe fury. The honey badger was small enough to be less intimidating than elephants or leopards, but she demonstrated every principle David was trying to teach. Rin spent 3 days following fury through the jungle. She watched the small animal investigate a termite mound while a leopard watched from the trees, completely unbothered by the predator's presence. She saw Fury face down a buffalo that had wandered too close to her favorite digging spot, standing her ground until the massive animal backed away. She observed Fury solving problems, adapting to obstacles, and never showing fear even when she probably should have that on the 4th day. Rin was tracking Fury through dense undergrowth when they encountered a snake. It was a black mamba, one of the most dangerous snakes in Africa. Rin froze, her training screaming at her to run. But Fury just examined the snake calmly, determined it was not interested in her, and continued on her way. Rin made herself move forward. Not because she was not afraid, but because if something weighing 8 kilograms could do it, she could manage it too. The snake ignored her, exactly as Fury had predicted it would. That evening, Rin returned to camp different. Still cautious, still afraid, but no longer paralyzed by her fear. David saw the change immediately. "You understand now," he said. "She is terrifying," Rin replied, watching Fury demolish a coconut with her powerful jaws. "Something that small should not be that fearless." "She is not fearless. She just does not let fear control her decisions. Fear tells her to be careful. It does not tell her to quit." The other students learned their own lessons. A Vorten security officer discovered that brute strength meant nothing if you did not understand the environment. A Kushan tactician realized that the best defense was often the one your enemy never saw coming. A human from City Colony learned that his own species' history with nature was deeper than he had known to be by the end of the 8 weeks. All 5 students had passed David's informal evaluation. They understood that security was not just about weapons and sensors. It was about reading the environment, understanding patterns, working with natural systems instead of against them. The program continued. More classes came, each learning the same fundamental lessons. Sector 7 became famous across the galaxy, not as a dangerous zone to avoid, but as the place where Earth taught its oldest wisdom point 2 years after the program started. David stood on his porch watching a class of students learning to track animals through the undergrowth. Fury was supervising, which mostly meant she was stealing their lunch supplies and leading them on complicated chases through the jungle. The students did not mind. They had learned that every interaction with the honey badger taught them something valuable. Quilix visited to review the program's success. The same administrator who had predicted failure within 6 months now stood looking at a thriving training center that had revolutionized galactic security doctrine. "I was wrong about this sector," Quilix admitted. "I did not understand what you were doing." "Most people do not," David said. "They see chaos and danger. They miss the patterns underneath. This jungle has rules. Everything here follows them. Once you learn the rules, it all makes sense." And her, Quilix pointed at Fury, who was currently teaching a class of students that personal belongings meant nothing in her jungle. What does she teach them? Persistence, courage, adaptability. She is 8 kilograms of pure determination. Students watch her stand up to elephants and survive encounters with leopards, and they realize size does not matter. Attitude matters. Well, matters. The refusal to give up matters. Quilix watched Fury successfully steal a tactical pack from a student 3 times her size. She has become an ambassador. She has become herself. David corrected. That is all she ever needed to be. The sun set over Sector 7, painting the jungle in gold and shadow. Somewhere in the distance, elephants called to each other. A leopard coughed from the canopy. The endless sound of insects and frogs rose like music. David had spent his whole career trying to protect wild places. He never imagined that one of those wild places would end up teaching the galaxy something it desperately needed to learn. Earth's power did not come from its weapons or its technology. It came from millions of years of evolution in environments that demanded adaptation, courage, and the wisdom to work with nature instead of trying to conquer it. The Galactic Council had dozens of worlds with advanced civilizations. But only Earth had spent its entire history learning to survive alongside creatures that could kill with a bite or a charge or a sting. That education created a species that understood something most aliens did not. The fiercest forces are not always the ones you command. Sometimes they're the ones you respect. Fury finished terrorizing the students and trotted back to the station. She climbed up beside David and settled against his leg, exhausted from a full day of being herself. He scratched behind her ears, and she made that soft chittering sound that meant she was content. Tomorrow would bring new students, new lessons, new chances to show the galaxy what a jungle and a honey badger could teach about real strength. But tonight, David just sat with his friend and listened to the jungle sing that IT was the same song that had played here for thousands of years. The only difference was that now, the galaxy was finally learning to listen, and somewhere in the Galactic Council's military academy, instructors were beginning to teach a new doctrine, one that did not start with weapons or tactics, but with a simple question: what can we learn from Earth? The answer, as David could have told them from the beginning, was everything.